Hello? Hello?
Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the final cabinet meeting of the both the municipal year and of the four-year municipal cycle of the London Borough of Ealing. I have to say it's been an absolute pleasure to have been doing this for the past year, and of course we have this little thing called an election on the 5th of May. We are, of course, in the pre-election period. So I hope that we will continue to focus our energies this evening on the matters of hand and offer, I'm sure, critical friendship to the reports that are on the table and avoid, where possible, needless politicization. But let's see what happens when we get into the agenda items as they are in front of us. What we are going to do, first of all, is to do the formalities. Do we have any apologies for absence? No. We do have some people joining via hybrid. I think Councillor Malcolm, I think Paul Martin as well, Interim Head of Paid Services online. Urgent matters, there are none. Items 7, 8 and 10 contain confidential information. I'd urge Cabinet members and others making contributions that if you wish to go into the gold papers, please do alert before you make the contribution, because we will have to turn off the live stream and clear the gallery. Declarations of interest. Would anybody like to raise declaration of interest? None. Minutes of the previous meeting held on the 9th of March. Are there any corrections people wish to read into the record? None. Are they agreed? Appointments to subcommittees and outside bodies, there are none. Agenda item number 7, acquisition of housing units in Acton. Councillor Wall.
Thanks, Bassam. The report is seeking authority to acquire housing units in Acton, principally 31 housing units in East Acton, and seeking authority to delegate to the Director of Community Development to complete the acquisition following due diligence. This is in line with our approved scheme to purchase units for temporary accommodation that will be cost neutral to the council over the longer term. Although we are one of the best performing councils in the country at preventing homelessness, the cost of temporary accommodation is an ongoing financial pressure for the council, so this will save money in the longer term. It comprises of 1, 2 and 3 bed units in one block consisting of 8 stories, and it will be owned and operated by the council. So I'm recommending the report for approval.
Thank you very much. There are questions from opposition members. Councillor Malcolm.
Question has been answered, Councillor Mason, by the officers earlier today, so I don't need to ask anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stafford.
Thank you very much, Leader. In section 4.6, this decision, and it's also referred to in the recommendation 1.2, this report is subject to what's described as a full financial viability assessment, which in 1.2 is delegated to officers. This is obviously a multi-million-pound deal. Will that decision come back to Cabinet once that full financial assessment has been done, so that it can receive proper scrutiny, both by yourselves as a Cabinet and also via the call-in process, if necessary, by the opposition or any councillor?
Thank you, Councillor Stafford. It isn't planned to come back to Cabinet. It's planned to delegate authority to the Director of Community Services, and it's mainly about section 106 and whether or not we get planning permission to change the scheme from its existing. If that's done, then we will go ahead and renegotiate the deal.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or points from Cabinet? If not, is the paper agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Moving to agenda item number 8, commissioning of Broadway Living BLRP to deliver new homes for the borough in line with the BLRP business plan. I won't say the rest. I'll hand over to Councillor Wall.
Thank you, Chair. So this report seeks approval to commission BLRP, the council's wholly owned development company, to take forward tranche 2 sites. That consists of 8 sites and will deliver circa 750 new homes, most of which will be affordable, and over 50% will be genuinely affordable. And it will contribute to our manifesto pledge going forward to deliver 4,000 in the next term, should we be successful following the re-elections in May. It will significantly increase the council's building programme and will be supplying energy efficient, secure homes, which will also bring financial benefits to the council in terms of reducing the need for expensive temporary accommodation and also reduce demand for social care and other support services. The report also seeks approval for a revised financial plan for tranche 2 and the transfer of 24 homes from Broadway Living at Surrey Crescent and Eastcote Lane to Broadway Living registered provider. And I recommend this report for approval.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stafford.
Thank you. Just 2 points on this one. First of all, obviously, there's been a lot of concerns about the loss of the youth centre at Parkview Road, Southall. Can the Cabinet give any, or the portfolio holder give any update on progress made with finding something else? The second is a more, I'm afraid, more practical one. Paragraph 4.12. Which is the part of the assumptions for the financial model for tranche 2. It states, as part of the modelling, no build cost or house price inflation has been included. I just wonder, what is the rationale behind having no inflationary pressures in those areas in your modelling?
So do you want to do, do you want to do the second one first, and then perhaps Councillor Nagpal or Councillor Raz, you want to come in on progress on where we are on the Southall Yak? But Lauren, do you want to come in first?
Only to say really that the plan has been subject to vigorous financial testing and the latest forecast from the government's inflation forecasts. So I don't know if I can say any more really. There's lots of assumptions in that business plan, but I mean, if you really want to get technical about it, I could ask Lucy Taylor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, and just to say, and we don't want to go into the gold papers, and Ross Brown may want to comment as well, but there has been a number of sensitivities modelled on this, on the business plan, and changes in development costs is one of those sensitivities that has been modelled in.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer the question by addressing the confidential appendices, which is where the assumptions around the financial stress testing sit within the papers.
So let's just in that case, Greg. So I think what I think it's fair to say. I think it's fair to say what you're getting both in the report and what I'm sure officers will be able to give you an assurance of is that the model through which is presented in the non-gold papers accounts for the question that you are asking. Now, we can go into the gold papers in order that you can get a greater degree of assurance, but that would require clearing the room in order for us to be able to discuss that. So it's up to you basically what you'd like to do.
Obviously, I've read the gold papers, and I'm not sure what I'm asking is necessarily needs. I don't agree that you need to give the detail from the gold papers to necessarily answer the question. But if officers are happy to talk to me offline afterwards, then I'm happy to move on. So
I think Ross, is it so? In my summary of the situation, are you able to give an assurance? And if on the basis of the assurance, if Councillor Stafford can have that conversation with you offline, are you sort of content to give that assurance in this context?
I am, yeah. I can answer the question broadly without making specific reference to the appendices, which will hopefully offer Councillor Stafford the necessary assurance. And to that end, we have undertaken a multitude of different stress test scenarios that do allow for the business plan to remain financially viable from a cash perspective, from a financial covenant perspective, and from a duration perspective. Our base assumptions in terms of modelling things such as the increase in potential costs that you referred to, we have considered. We feel our contractual position would be done in today's prices or close to today's prices, but there is capacity within the business plan overall to allow for increase in build inflation should we have to enter into contracts on that basis.
And I think it's fair to say that the quicker we get this done, the quicker we can mitigate some of those risks. Yeah. So, Cam, do you want to come in on YAC?
Yes. Sorry, Councillor Stafford, can you just repeat your question on the youth centre?
I just want to know if there's an update on progress following, obviously, the concerns raised by young people at YAC, last year, and where we were with that.
Okay, thanks. So there was a consultation which ran for 12 weeks online, and we wanted young people to give us their views on the youth plan and what they wanted in a youth centre in Southall in terms of location, activities, how often they'd use it, etc. That consultation closed last month. So the results of that are currently being analysed. And in terms of the youth centre itself, it is going to close, and the activities in the interim are going to be taking place from the Dormerswells hub with a satellite at the Dominion Centre, and while the new youth centre is being built.
Great. And I think it's fair to say that we're on the public record as an administration to ensure that we do provide a new facility. We've discussed the costings of that at full council, and we've certainly confirmed our intention is to find a mechanism through which we can put that into the hands of young people themselves. If we're re-elected, I think that's entirely what we intend to do. So on the basis of the questions and the answers that have been given, directing members to the recommendations in the report, are they agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So internals refurbishment framework agreement, the water contract. Councillor Wall.
Thank you, Chair. This is lot 1, year 4, so it's the 4th year in a 5-year cycle of planned improvement works to our council housing stock. kitchens, bathrooms and wet rooms. It's procuring out of a framework that's existing with 4 contractors on it, procuring 2 of them to go forward for this year, year 4, and dividing east and west in the borough to scale up the level of planned maintenance to those buildings. They did suffer a loss. They got behind because of years 1, 2 and 3 with COVID, but hoping to recoup that now. So it's basically scaling up for this year, and then next year inviting a mini tender to occur again between the 4 contractors.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stafford.
Forgive me, is this item 9 or 10? I'm getting slightly confused here.
My apologies, I have skipped over one, but we are on mini evaluation. Yeah. So internal refurbishment framework agreement, item 10. We'll go back to 9 in a second. In which case, not to sound like Councillor Gary Malcolm, but my questions have been answered on this one. No, that's fine. So on the basis of on the basis of the presentation of the report and the recommendations that are in it, are Cabinet members happy to agree? We will go back to number 9. Naughty me. Where is number 9? No, it's not in my. It's not in. That's why. Okay. So it's just it's in my paper copy. That's what went wrong. In my paper copy, it was just the next one, but I want on 9. So energy efficiency funding grants related to tackling the climate crisis. Councillor Costigan.
Thanks, Chair. So this report is another report that brings forward our work on retrofitting homes within the borough so that we can combat, in particular, fuel poverty. We are working with 13 London boroughs. We're the lead borough in Ealing, so we're really, quite advanced at doing this stuff. And we have led the way in applying for funding for various retrofitting projects. This particular grant funding is called the Home Upgrade Grant, and it focuses on homes that are experiencing fuel poverty, but they're a particular type of property. They're a property that is off the gas network. So instead, they might use high carbon heating, for example, oil or coal or electric heating. So this grant funding then is about those homes being retrofitted to sort of decarbonize the heating system that they use. We, as I say, are doing this for 13 authorities across London. As the lead, we get some funding for the administration and management of the project, but in terms of homes in Ealing, it's 8 million overall, but the funding for homes in Ealing will be 673,000. It's still very much worth doing. Those homes will see a significant impact on their heating bills, but of course, we all know there's a cost of living crisis. There is the ending of the increase in the fuel cap. So of course, people will potentially, still see bills increasing despite all this work that we're doing to retrofit homes. But nonetheless, I think it is definitely the right thing to do, and to make sure that our homes are, that fuel poverty in the borough is addressed as far as we can. But I would say that this funding will only reach 1.88% of the properties that could benefit if only we had the money that we needed to address fuel poverty in the borough. Unfortunately, there's still a huge number of properties out there that Ealing Council is ready and willing to retrofit. We have the skills, we're leaders in the field in London, but sadly, the funding has not come from government to do this. We've got a measly 1.88% of what we need to do the job, which is unfortunate. But that being said, I think it's still a good report, and I'll commend it to colleagues.
Perhaps Councillor Costigan, a windfall tax on energy companies could perhaps pay for some of this rather than it necessarily going out to shareholder dividends, as we are seeing in the largest crunch in living standards in 70 years. Councillor Stafford.
Thank you very much. I didn't have you down as a commie, but nice to put you in a bracket. Just really, I wanted to say congratulations to officers for using and utilising this excellent government grant so well. Thank you.
I think, as I outlined, this is a tiny amount of money. It is a drop in the ocean of what we need in the borough. We need far more action, and we need it now. And we've seen just recently the reports on climate change and the impact that it's having. It's almost too late at this point, but it's not too late to address fuel poverty. It's not too late to have an impact on people's bills, but the government is doing very, very little work to change that. Less than 2% of properties in the borough having fuel poverty addressed in this way is actually embarrassing. It's embarrassing that the government has not made this a priority in the current climate, and that they would not see fuel poverty as a priority to address is a disgrace. But, you know, I would expect nothing less, I guess, of this current government.
So with that contribution, can I direct the Cabinet members to the recommendations in the report? Are they agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. We now move to the Council Performance Report Q3. Of course, this is the final Cabinet meeting of the civic year, but we, given the time frame, we look at last quarter. So this is not the end of year report. That will be for the new administration after May to receive. But as is customary under the new leadership, we will go through and give each Cabinet member the opportunity to speak briefly on where their key performance indicators indicate where we are doing well, and likewise where the challenges in the system may be. So we are going to start on, as we do, with tackling inequality. Councillor Raza.
Thanks. Most of the tackling inequality indicators seem to be falling within target, but we are still struggling a little bit with, obviously, violence with injury, and that, I think, is an uptick from when we came out of lockdown and a lot of the sort of add-on issues around that. But our amazing work with the youth justice system, and also with our engaging our young offenders and to stop them going into the system in the first place, is going well. So in March, we rolled out, well, we were the first in London to roll out the violence reduction programme, which is delivering sort of therapeutic support for our young people. And this will vastly help improve the area where we have fallen short in the percentage of young people who've committed serious youth violence. And so hopefully with that work going forward, we should turn that green too. Thanks.
Councillor Costigan, climate action.
I wasn't expected to be called so quickly. Yes, I think there has been some positive news in terms of the climate action indicators. We've been doing really well all year on the cleanliness of the borough. So in the mid 90% on the percentage of the borough that is clear of detritus and of litter. I think that's a really key indicator for our residents, and that's something people really care about. And we've continued to hit targets on that, and we're doing really, really positively. And I think that's testament to the work of our Greener Ealing colleagues and the right decision to take that back in-house and to really focus our efforts on that area. But we've had additional positive news this quarter. The impact of COVID across London, also for a reason that we're not quite clear, did mean that there was an increase in graffiti. And although Greener Ealing is hitting all its targets in terms of removing the graffiti when it appears, we were seeing an increase in graffiti. And like I say, this was reflected across London. But we've had quite positive news in that we've that's actually reduced a bit, and we're doing better now on the graffiti that we were. And we're still keeping an eye on it, but it has moved out of the red, and now we're looking at quite a positive movement there. The area that we continue to be a bit below target, and again, it's an area that has come out of COVID and that is reflected across the whole of London. And that is not quite achieving the target on percentage of household waste that is recycled. Now, that measure is a percentage of the overall residual waste, of the overall waste that we have. So the fact that during COVID, people have been working from home and their residual waste, so the stuff that goes in the black bin, has actually increased quite a lot. And their food waste that a lot of people continue to put in the black bin has also increased because they're eating their lunches at home. All of that has contributed across London to local authorities not achieving their aimed for recycling levels. However, we are expecting with the move back to work, a lot of people are back 2-3 days a week now, and also the impact of our food waste project. These figures just go up to December. So we are expecting that both of those will have an impact in the final quarter. And we'll look across London and hopefully we'll see a similar change there.
Thank you very much. Councillor Blackhair, Healthy Lives.
Thanks, Jess. Some fantastic work from the adults team on Better Lives. And I think last time we had this report, I thanked officers for their work on bringing the average waiting time for assessments down, which is fantastic. And would also like this month to particularly highlight the number of care reviews being carried out. It's a fantastic way of making sure not only that our residents are getting the care they need, but that it's delivered in the most efficient way possible. As we mentioned last time as well, the indicators on child excess weight are red. Again, this is partly because of the effects of the pandemic, and I would also like to remind Cabinet that we haven't measured as many children this year because of those reasons, and that it's only a small sample. What would fantastically help that is getting behind programs like Let's Go Southall and increasing the number of school streets that encourage children to walk, scoot, run, jog to school. And I think 50 would be a good target for school streets in the future, Chair. But I'm not sure why I picked that figure out of the air.
I think that's a great idea, Josh. Somebody should put that in a manifesto. I think we have a fairer start. Councillor Nagpal.
Thanks, Chair. So percentage of education, health and care plans issued within 20 weeks is green, 74% against a target of 75%. So performance has remained relatively high despite the challenges of growing demand nationally. And we're exploring maintaining capacity there as well. So we're increasing the proportion of assistant educational psychologists, improving the age range of our early help offer in response to a bulge in referrals linked to COVID pressures, and increasing speech and language therapy capacity. Percentage of 16 to 17-year-olds not in education, employment or training. This is green, 0.7% against a target of 1.5%. So this is an area where we perform really strongly, and that's because we have connection staff supporting all of our eligible young people, particular emphasis on very vulnerable or risky children, and young people, and helping create opportunities for young people within the council and the community. Connections workers within 11 of our secondary schools. We're working to develop a programme with the police to target young people in gangs to provide specialist support. And we also have connections workers in our youth centres to support all our young people into education, training and employment opportunities. In red, we do have the rate of looked after children per 10,000 population and the number of looked after children. So the increase in looked after children is driven by a significant increase in unaccompanied asylum seeking children over the first 3 quarters of the year. This is 42 versus 13 in the same period last year. We've also had an increase in families who are in distress, which is an impact of the pandemic, notably adolescents where there are mental health difficulties or where there's a risk of exploitation. This trend is in keeping with national and local statistics. London has seen a 15% increase in Q2, and a further increase is expected.
Thank you very much. And I'll take this opportunity actually, just as we discuss children looked after, just to put on record sort of our thanks, our collective thanks to officers in that service who I think have responded to the desire to change the way that we look at corporate parent committee in a really positive and constructive way. But I'll also take this opportunity to actually put on record thanks to particularly to Councillor Milliken and to Councillor Rooney, who are 2 councillors who've been on the corporate parent. Councillor Rooney for the last 4 years, but I think Councillor Milliken perhaps since a long time, who are stepping down from the council and who've dedicated an awful lot of their time and their energy and their focus to corporate parent, and that, you know, and I think we should put that on record, that we absolutely appreciate that, and we can make that perhaps as a, and Greg, if you'll join me, we can do that as a note of thanks within the cabinet report. We did that at corporate parent, but we could do that again now, I think. Councillor Wall, Councillor Mahfouz, decent living incomes.
Thanks, Chair. So this evening, again, of the three indicators that come within the portfolio, all three are showing as green. Delighted to say, and as Councillor Costigan has referred to, that cost of living crisis, we are doing our bit to try and make sure that we are supporting our residents into work or into better paid work. In that first indicator, in relation to supporting people gaining work or better work, we had a target over the first 3 quarters of 900. And I'm delighted to say that we have absolutely smashed that by almost 100% improvement on that, with over 1,500 people supported in the first 3 quarters. And if I can, as this is the last meeting of the Cabinet of the municipal year, just to put a vote of thanks to Angela McKeever, Eva Manova, Vanita Nichols, Christy Gonzalez, and the team for organising a fabulous jobs fair, which we put on a couple of weeks ago, which was just brilliant to have that back in person, and the buzz in the room from people from Northall, Southall, Acton and elsewhere who come along to receive that support in person from our fabulous teams, but also from the businesses that were available there to offer their jobs on hand. In addition to that, we've been supporting people get the qualifications they need as they look to retrain and train to get the hopefully better paid jobs. Again, we had a target of 2,300 odd in the first 3 quarters. And again, almost 50% over and above that figure of over 3,300 supported. And lastly, we have set that target of 41 living wage employers within the borough, and we have achieved that target as well, which is absolutely brilliant to see. And of course, I hope that if we are to be re-elected, then we will be looking to go even further on all of those figures over the coming 4 years.
Thank you very much. And let's go to Councillor Donnelly for the Inclusive Economy.
Thank you, Chair. Small number of indicators on my portfolio. Strong performance in terms of making council services available digitally, where we're running ahead of our target at 67%. We're having more trouble in getting people to make use of the services. So there's been a dip on that one. But I think, as the report says, we're looking to raise awareness of what's available with the population. In particular, we're very hopeful that the bringing back the ability to make appointments for housing repairs online will have a significant impact on the throughput there. The other negative was a sadly predictable one with the onset of the Omicron variant of COVID at the end of November. The sick absence figures took a knock in the quarter, but obviously nobody can be complacent given that COVID rates are currently higher than they've ever been at any point in the 2 years since the pandemic started. But clearly we're hopeful to see improvements on that as soon as possible.
Thank you. And Councillor Wall, genuinely affordable homes.
Thank you, Chair. Well, despite increases of people coming to us homeless, our proactive early prevention work has outperformed our target. We had a target of 25% for this year. We actually achieved 47.4%, preventing families going into temporary accommodation. And that was up from last year too. And that's despite COVID, the pressures from COVID, and also the welfare government changes that have been in place for the last few years. And also we've brought down the numbers of families in bed and breakfast quite significantly. Our target was 70. We brought that down to 11 this year. So we've really performed really well there. And in our performance on genuinely affordable homes, this is a snapshot in time at the end of Q3. And due to some delays with slippage in Broadway Living's programme, and also delays and shortages with COVID and Brexit, there were some delays, but we've more than made up for that. We had a target of 2,500 for the end of this term. We've exceeded it already at this point in time with another month to go. So at this moment, we've got 2,571 genuinely affordable homes, and we should get around about another 100 if everything comes off before the end of the term.
Thank you very much. And, it's been absolutely wonderful actually to see those hoarding boards of Henry Construction go up at various different locations across the borough in the last quarter. So we are motoring away. It's not that we don't love them, but good growth, Councillor Manro and Thriving Communities, Councillor Anand, your targets are annual. So as ever, we note that your KPIs will be discussed at the end of year. And at which point I go to Councillor Malcolm, who I believe has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's worrying that in table 1 and 2 we can see 1 in 7 KPIs are red, and in the direction of travel about a quarter of them are going down. But if I specifically look at one of the indicators, the household waste recycled, which I think the portfolio holder mentioned recently, is still red. Relating to this, there were some changes recently for the garden waste subscription scheme. It appears that testing was not done properly, so I want to ask the question of the portfolio holder: why was the testing not done properly? Because certain people with certain browsers, for example, couldn't subscribe. They wanted to, and they were subscribing before, and they've been turned off that system because they've had some great problems, lots of complaints in the last week or so. So can I ask how this change was created, and why was it not communicated and tested as thoroughly as it should have been?
So I think the first thing to say in terms of the performance report, Councillor Malcolm, is you've sat through countless numbers of these during your time, and I'm sure you've experienced circumstances when some of them have been up and some of them have been down. And the whole point of cabinet members introducing them is to give you a flavour as to what the trajectory is. I mean, do you want to? I mean, cabinet isn't general Q&A, but I mean, you're very welcome to respond to that if you want to.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And yeah, certainly, I expect questions like this more at full council rather than in cabinet. This is a specific report, and I was very happy to go through the indicators that relate to climate action. Just in terms of the garden waste, though, as you specifically raised it, certainly the new system, we wrote out to our subscribers regarding the new system. The new system was required because I'm afraid the old system was no longer fit for purpose. I know Councillor Malcolm is very big on IT. You quite often raise it, Councillor Malcolm, and you're always a big champion of making sure that the council moves ahead and progresses along that kind of digital line as far as we can. And certainly the system that we currently had for garden waste was past its sell-by date, and we could no longer continue with it. So therefore, the new system has been brought in. With these IT projects, again, as you're probably aware, there's always, a kind of some teething difficulties. We always find this, I think, with IT projects in the private sector, in the public sector, wherever we work. But in the case of the garden waste system, we are very much aware that it will take people a little bit of time to get used to the new system, and hence we extended the deadline to sign up until the 1st of June. I'm glad to report that we've already got at least 50% of people who have signed up, and with that extended deadline, I think we've got more than enough time to get everyone on the system. I think there was some issues reported with some people's browsers, and particularly less well-used browsers like Firefox, and some of those. Again, Councillor Malcolm is probably more up to date on some of these IT issues than I am. But my understanding is that is in the main been sorted out, and we've had some really good work from officers who've actually been phoning people directly and talking them through what they're using, the kit that they're using, where they have had any issues. So I'm very confident that we will get everyone signed up by the deadline, and people will be able to continue to enjoy our very successful and very popular garden waste service.
Councillor Stafford.
Thank you, and thank you, Leader, for the comments about Councillor Milliken, which I will pass on. He's currently abroad for his son's wedding, so I will pass that when he gets back. Just a few questions. On the genuinely affordable homes, the portfolio holder said that you have got, I wrote it down, we have got 2,500 and something completed. In an FOI earlier this year, actual completed was 1,217. So can we have an update on exactly how many have been completed, given the administration's commitment to transparency, rather than us having to FOI that result. If you don't have it at your fingertips, I'm happy to receive it tomorrow or later in the week.
I'm not sure you were the person who submitted the freedom of information.
I wasn't the person who submitted the freedom of information.
You can always ask a question.
But fortunately, I'm able to ask you here and now. So that's
that's
great.
You, Councillor Malcolm, have always got the opportunity to ask questions. If you didn't ask the question and somebody else asked it via an FOI, then good on them for asking it via an FOI. But I'm sure Councillor will have a substantive response for you, but let's go through your other questions.
Yes, so just on to the recycling issues. Can we just have a confirmation, because I did ask last time, but I don't think I got a full answer, was when will the flats recycling rollout be completed? Can we have an update on that, please? Because obviously that will help with the diminishing recycling rate. I'm still unconvinced by this, that it's COVID, given that the recycling rate is falling further from actually the point when we were all locked down the year before last, and actually people are going back to the offices now, though I accept not in the same numbers as prior to COVID, but certainly more than the year before, when recycling rates are actually higher. So I don't think we can, I think we need to think, I think the administration needs to think further about that. So what further thoughts have been had on how we can bring up the recycling rates? And then on that one, and Councillor Malcolm has touched on a specific, but I want to talk about in the general. In the previous report, the diminishing amount of garden waste collection was cited as a reason for the poorer recycling rates. That's not in this report. Is that because garden recycling rates has gone back up, or was that just an oversight, or it just wasn't included in the report? So can we have that? Obviously, there has been a problem with the re-signing up, and I still don't fully understand why people had to sign up. But that goes on to my final point, which is about the digital element and our inability, it seems, to get people to use the digital services. In talking to residents on the doorstep, one of the problems that they highlight to me is that where they try to use the digital services, they don't work. And when they try to ring the council, they can't get through to anyone, leaving them deeply frustrated.
Again, I think we need a question.
Okay, so what work is being done to ensure that the systems, such as the guard waste system, are properly implemented, and that where residents can't use them or don't want to use them, there is a human being on the end of a telephone for them to speak to?
Councillor Wall, do you want to come in on the genuine affordable housing numbers?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. We've always measured in our manifesto pledge, our pledge was for 2,500 genuinely affordable homes, which included starts on sites or completions. So this has been consistent all the way through. The figure I gave you earlier, the
Can you not interrupt?
The 2,571 was again for starts on site and completions, and that's as of now current. If you want a further breakdown of that into completions against start on site, I can ask for that separately and get that for you.
Councillor Costigan, why on earth during the spring could garden waste potentially be being collected?
Absolutely. Thank you for the questions. I think some of them, although were statements, in terms of food waste from flats, you said that you asked last time when the rollout would complete. And my recollection was, and I'm not even sure it was at Cabinet, it might have been a full council, that you asked when it had started. And I explained to you at that time that it had already started and that I would bring you to a communal food waste receptacle outside some of our flats if you were willing to come with me, but you never took me up on that request, on that invite, perhaps for a future date. Yes. So the rollout of the food waste, communal food waste receptacles in our flats started halfway through last year. Well, actually more, I think October, actually around October, and it's been rolled out in stages. There's 7 or 8 tranches. And we have let councillors know where it's been rolled out in their area, and I think it completes around June. But we have rolled it out across the borough to flats. And actually, if you go and look at some of when you're out knocking on doors over the next few weeks, councillor, you may come across some of these bins in your travels, and they are already being well used. We do hope we do expect that will have an impact on the recycling figures. I think you asked as well about the recycling figures and the impact of COVID, and you asked about whether that might have changed at this point. The figures that are in the report, there's quite clearly in the narrative, it explains that there is a particular impact in December because of the way the waste is collected and the way it actually stays in storage around December. So that's actually included in the narrative. It does explain this. So that can sometimes see an increase in residual waste over that Christmas period. So that will have had an impact on the figures as well. That is outlined in the report. In terms of garden waste, I think the chair has already responded on that as to why garden waste might not be that high over the winter months, and indeed we don't collect garden waste in the kind of over the Christmas period. I certainly didn't put out my garden waste at any stage since probably last October or November, but it's gone out again in the last couple of weeks. And I think that was probably it. I think there was the digital questions then that perhaps my colleague would want to come in.
Councillor Donnelly.
Yeah, thank you. It's difficult to comment on the basis of anecdotes that Councillor Stafford may hear, but I can say that like any good digital team, we review feedback we get to ensure that performance meets our expectations. So if residents are finding problems and that comes through to us, we'll work to try to resolve those problems. I don't think it's clear that people don't use the system because they don't work. I think those of us who use the system, I mean, I find the systems do work on the various technologies that I use. And I think it's as much about trying to get people to understand the range of things they can do and the ease and convenience that they can do it. And the other advantage is the more people we have using the digital systems, the easier it will be for people who, for very good reasons, can't use those systems to access us through more traditional means. So we want to clear a path for people who have to contact us by phone to be able to do so with the smallest number of people ahead of them in the queue. And I don't think that's an unreasonable aspiration.
Thank you very much. So on the basis of the questions that have been asked and the answers that have been given, I direct members to the recommendations, which are to note the report. Is the report so noted?
Noted. Agreed.
Okay, so that brings us to the conclusion of this cabinet meeting and of the meeting of the entire calendar of the civic year, the 4 years. So I'll bring you in a moment, Councillor Donnelly, but I think the first thing I want to do is to put on record, I think, our thanks, particularly as a new administration and as a new leadership team, to the officers who have been with us lockstep, guiding us and giving us sound advice all the way through the process of this year. It's been truly appreciated, and we've had difficult decisions to take. We've had difficult situations in which we have faced, but as ever, they've done that with absolute rigour and professionalism. So if we could record that in the minutes, that would be most wonderful. Councillor Donnelly.
Yeah, I echo that, but also I think our thanks to you, Chair, for your leadership of the Cabinet during the year. And if I can particularly pick out thanks to those officers who've supported the Cabinet in its administration and its meetings over what's been a pretty tumultuous period in terms of having to get to grips, acquire and get to grips with new technology to enable us to broadcast successfully to the people of Ealing on a monthly basis. So we do appreciate it. And if Linda can log thanks to herself constitutionally, then I'd like her to do so.
Are those so agreed? Agreed. Well, thank you very much. Okay, so the date of the next meeting will be held on the 15th of June, and the good people of Ealing will determine who is here.